Hello, and welcome to the Product Insiders LinkedIn Live series, where we interview product leaders and learn how they leveraged customer insights to navigate tough product decisions. I'm your host, Zach Lyons, Managing Partner of Agile Innovation Advisors. If you're joining us live today, please enter your location in the chat so we know who is with us. And with that, I will start. Today, our guest is Claudia Tanega, Director of Product Management, formerly at Allergan Data Labs, Tebra, PADI, Oakley, MindBody, and Verizon Wireless. So Claudia has a ton of experience to share with us. And we'll be asking her some questions, but if you have any specific things you'd like to ask her, please enter them in the chat and we'll get to them in a bit. So with that, let's begin. Claudia, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks for having me.
So I'd like to just jump right in and ask you my first question, which is, thinking about a tough product decision that you've had to navigate, can you please just tell us a little bit about your role at the time and the situation?
Sure. I'm going to go back to a few years back when I was with a company called Cario. They're now called Tebra. And they are essentially an EMR. They are specializing in software for independent practices. I was a senior product manager. I had joined the company, not ever working in healthcare. I really, really wanted to work in healthcare. I was a director at another company, and I had a chance to come over, try healthcare, and I stepped down into a senior PM role. And I'm glad I did. A great experience. Working on this medical software. And I first started off in a squad with regulatory, and it was a great introduction into the interoperability requirements around medical software. And it was a great introduction to healthcare. About 6 months into my role, senior leadership had been doing some discovery work into better understanding payment processing and the practice requirements needed for processing payments and collecting payments. So obviously, provider hospital expenses have grown, patient expenses were increasing, and that contributed to patients falling behind in their copays. So there'd been a little bit of discovery on the senior level. When I stepped in, the general understanding and information I was given was we did a survey of a little over 200 customers. This would be our B2B practice providers. And they were basically trying to understand their needs around collecting payments. We knew from syndicated research that patient responsibility, had grown. So copays, coinsurance, deductibles have increased. And those are the things that providers needed to essentially bill their patients for. But now they're having to bill faster. They're having to bill more often. They're having to follow up on those payments as well. So it became a bit of a struggle. And obviously the patients themselves, they're used to a digital experience or, paying from a retail standpoint, which obviously practitioners didn't have this capability. So they're looking for basically the providers are trying to collect in a timely and really efficient manner. And the majority of providers needed basically about 1 month and a couple of statements to be able to collect from the patients. So those trends basically are staying the same. They haven't really increased that much in the last couple of years, but obviously for the providers to be able to meet the same level that the patients are, they have to adopt digital at the same level. So the revenue cycle management essentially is the process that we were working through. And it was decided that a need for mobile payments was basically a great way to bill fast, efficiently. And I should give you the timeline of this. We started doing this discovery around January of 2020. So that's a big difference. You can know what happens there around March of 2020. So that was the initial need and the initial discovery. So our challenge was, how do we address patient payments? How do we collect fast, quickly? There were some financial targets, but again, as the senior PM, I came from one squad into another. I'm still learning healthcare. I'm still learning our business platform. So
Okay.
my challenge was to really figure out, is there a business case here? At the time, senior leadership had already determined some initial financial targets. Obviously, we were earning, we were earning the revenue from the payment processing. That's essentially was our opportunity. But when you have another feature in a software platform that your providers are purchasing, again, that's, you're going to increase your customer retention. So it was a really great feature to add. It was going to add additional revenue, but my concern was I'm new to healthcare. I have a lot to learn. What do I need to know? Will we be able to make the targets that were even estimated or promised to leadership and the board? And can I even meet my initial target year one? So that was just the initial discovery and the initial problem setup.
So just to make sure I understand, so the company was already in the market, electronic medical records, EMR, for those who aren't familiar with the acronym. And was this a new set of features? And you guys were already doing revenue cycle management, but this sounds like it was a new feature you were adding.
Okay,
it was. And so the senior management team had already come up with some financial targets, a little bit of cart before the horse, I guess, before even really doing discovery. And then, so there was a challenge. You were stepping in. And I'm kind of curious, like, how did you personally feel being new to healthcare and sort of having this target on your head? What was going through your head at the time? I'm just kind of curious.
Oh yeah, nervous, obviously nervous. I think that's where I learned, the more I can talk to customers, the more I can get in the field, the more confident that I can hear from customers what they need, why they need it, how they're going to use it, the more confident I became over time. So in January, we just started looking at some of the initial data, syndicated research. I don't think I talked to customers till late January, maybe early February. And it was time from February to December of 2020. I just talked to customers constantly. So at the end of the year, I probably talked to about 40 different customers. And some of them, it was repetitively. So we probably had about 60, 65 conversations. I was in the field probably about 4 or 5 times visiting practices. And that made me so much more confident and clear because I was hearing quickly, real time from real providers, real needs in that moment of truth. And I would even sit in some of the offices and sit at the front, at just the front waiting area and watch the front desk interact with their patients, essentially collect payment.
Wow. So you were very heavily in the field. Not all product managers have the skill or time to do that. So that's fantastic. You did it. How did you figure out what to look for? What insights? In other words, what were you trying to find out, or what insights did you feel were key in making sort of your decision? And what decision were you trying to make at the time?
Yeah, I knew initially leadership had asked for an SMS billing system, essentially, that our practices.
They told you this is what we should go to. Okay.
Exactly.
Not uncommon. Yep.
Exactly. You should develop this. Really, should I? And I'm also really new to healthcare and I'm new to this. Like, I actually need a little bit more confidence to know I should build this thing and know how to build it so that I can make sure it's actually successful, given that there's already been a target identified. So for me, it was really critical. I went in knowing, okay, I know what leadership wants, but is that really the right thing that we should build right now, and how? So for me, I had to understand really how were they going to use it, who was going to use it. So reality, we always talk, at least from the B2B practitioners are working on practice platforms, we always talk about the provider, but in reality, the provider is really the visionary of their practice, but it's really the staff, the clinical staff, the front desk staff, back office staff. They're the ones that actually run the office. So it was really critical to talk to these folks. They're getting directions from their boss, which is the provider. What do they want in their practice, how they want to run their business. But we need to understand how they're going to actually execute it. So at least for me, I had to be in office to better understand it. And even just talking to the practitioners and their staff, I needed approval from the practitioners to be able to talk to their staff. I needed to understand how they're going to execute, what they're going to need in their office. What do they use? What systems do they use? How do they know? Again, practitioners and their office staff are not high tech. They're generally not used to it. It's got to be something very basic. They have to learn it and onboard very quickly. So understanding how and how they're going to onboard and learn and execute, that had to be relatively quick. This had to be really easy for them to execute. Now, additionally, that was one type of customer. My other customer is the billing companies. We had thousands of billing companies that actually billed for their practices. So that is a different customer need. They had to provide reporting. They had to provide clarity. They had to show results, how they were billing their patients. And this had to, again, the same needs, which is bill the patient effectively, efficiently, get the payment in full as fast as you possibly can. Those were the same needs, but they had to provide different types of reporting. They had to consolidate it with other reporting. They had to show that billing for their practice, they were exceeding expectations. So their needs were slightly different, but we solved for the practice directly first, and then we solved for the biller.
It is interesting you point out, which again, not an uncommon situation in a B2B environment where you have multiple constituents in the practice office, from the practitioner to the office staff. Sometimes some offices even have dedicated billing people, I know,
Yes.
depending on the size of the office, all with, slightly different needs. Overall, high level, as you pointed out, same objective, but slightly different needs as they go about doing their task, their job. And then you also had, I guess, a third party, it sounds like, in addition. Of course, you also had patients as well, right? Who were on the flip side of that, were paying. So interesting. So tell us a little bit about, how you reconciled this. What needs did you get? How did you end up going back to the management team saying, this is what ultimately we should go do?
Yeah. So ultimately, I mean, we executed SMS patient billing. There were a couple of things there, which is how do we enable the practice staff to go into the platform to select who they're going to bill. Obviously, they have to get the correct mobile number. The mobile number needs to be validated. They need to have that approval. Patients need to understand whether this is going to affect their mobile bill or not. The text message has to come across clear, efficient, fast. I can't be sending over, 3 major blocks of text. This has to be really simple. They need to be able to click through and see a bill. In some cases, the patient has to be protected. You need to hide, essentially, who is going to receive what type of bill. It can't be visible. That's patient protected information. So, there's aspects there, like, do they log in to see their account? Can they pay their bill without logging in? And that came down to understanding certain specialties. Mental health, the way mental health builds compared to like a general practice billing, there's more protection and security around mental health. There's more risks around what's visible. What if that text message, what if that number was, misconstrued when they actually wrote up the patient profile? Now I'm sending a bill to Zach for Claudia, and now Zach knows Claudia's seeing a mental health practitioner for, whatever purposes. So there's a lot of security protection, requiring logins for certain types of practitioners or certain types of billing. But essentially, if you could pay the bill quickly without logging in, that actually we found through an initial alpha, then a beta, then a broader general release launch, that helped us determine, what we were going to be able to, receive payment for fast. And essentially, some of the early alpha and beta tests helped us obviously continue to refine the features, the workflows, understanding the specialties, what billers needed, and then also helped us determine, essentially how do we do our rollout, and again, our general releases within our office. How do we release and go to market effectively, so our practitioners, our onboarding team can communicate the product and the features, who they're for, knowing again, when we were launching these alpha and betas, we needed to ensure, who are we doing who is this product really great for, this feature, and who do we maybe not hit the mark for? Mental health, we realized probably a few months in, there needed to be a little bit more security protection, needed to ensure logins for certain types of practitioners. Those things came a little bit later in the launch.
So there were certainly some sub-segments of the market that had slightly different challenges or issues that you
Yeah.
discovered as you went about. But I
Yeah.
want to circle back to one thing real quick. So you mentioned you ended up landing on an SMS solution, and I'm just curious, like, what led to that? Was there some insight or something that you discovered that said this is the path we should go down? Because that's really, and then you talked a lot about all the challenges and issues in doing that, but I'm kind of curious, like, what actually started that whole journey?
Yeah, really discovering, I think SMS really came through some of the leadership discovery, knowing that patient collections was an issue and that digital, embracing digital in offices was critical. So I think that seed of information was already there. There was enough syndicated information that said probably this would be the best way to execute and ensuring that practices can collect faster and frankly, even more efficiently. So, that seed of information was there. Doing field research and spending as much time as we could interviewing customers to ask them, could you use this? For a lot of them, it was new. And again, I think the timing is really critical here because I mentioned we started this work in January. Our alpha launched in, I would say, around early March. COVID came March 20th is when even our staff, we were sent home. So I was already starting our beta at that time. So it was actually easier to say, practitioners, if you're closing your offices for the next few weeks, give this a try. This is a great time to test this feature out. So we didn't charge them for trying the feature out, and we were looking for white paper data, like try this out, see if you receive your payments, how much of your payments you receive. And then if you approve or allow us to, we'd like to, include your information in a white paper. Once I had a couple of practices receiving payments and receiving more payments in full faster than they ever did through paper billing, which, mind you, at this time, several of the practices said they couldn't go to the post office. They would normally prepare their printed bills. They would stuff their envelopes. They would actually have somebody go to the post office and mail all of the bills. In some cases, they didn't have to travel to a local post office, but some did when you had a lot of, bulk mail. At that time, if they can't go, this was a great option. So I really think COVID and that March, April period really helped encourage many practitioners to try this out because they had no other options.
Oh,
And
interesting.
it was a great way to keep that momentum. And I think that really helped contribute to our results. Once we had a really great couple of case studies, these were white papers that we started promoting and communicating to our existing customer base. Getting our next group of customers into, an expanded beta and then moving to general release was actually fairly easy.
It's so interesting. So and this is my sort of summation of this. So you guys had sort of an approach, SMS in mind. You went out and did some discovery around that, but it sounds like, at least at the time, you moved forward. The timing being because of the pandemic, of course, who knew that was going to happen? But it was the perfect timing to go launch it. So you started getting actual data on this feature and seeing, was there a benefit to the customer and using SMS for collecting, billing and collecting from patients. So you end up getting positive data. I was going to ask you, my next question is, what was the result? So it sounds like you had some positive input from that. So you could write about that, put that in the white paper and use that as part of your go-to-market strategy.
Exactly. Yeah. Comments from our practices were, wow, SMS actually delivers. I got more complete payments and I got payments faster than I've ever received in the past several years. So yeah, we're interested in trying more. So I think at the time, I don't think we charged for some of the initial processing for a few weeks to get enough data. And then I think gradually we started layering and setting expectations for the payment processing. Later, we actually had subscriptions where they would complete a subscription and then pay for the payment processing. Along with obviously enabling the capability, it had to be easy and fast. The practice staff had to find it, click a few buttons, enable not just an email or a written, printed bill, but also the SMS. So in some cases, practitioners weren't comfortable. They want to layer in a couple of things. But obviously, you have to sign up. We gave them scripted, descriptions around you're gonna sign up your patients for SMS billing. When you're collecting their information and you're collecting their mobile number, you want to ask them, are you open to receiving a bill via text? In most cases, we received a lot of yeses. In some cases, no. Actually, for some of our older practitioner. Some of our practitioners that served an older patient base, like geriatrics, probably not the best and most effective. But in some cases, some of the even again, going out into the field and talking to customers was so critical, because even in some of our cases where you had geriatric practitioners that would either go into nursing homes, they billed parents, they billed the children.
Oh yeah, adult children, right? The caregivers. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. So in that case, they said, I've got to send, 2 bills. I have to send, the printed bill, the email bill. Like, I love having an option of being able to send an SMS, because I'm going to send, the kids that are on their account, their caretakers. I'm going to send them the SMS and the email, but I'll send the paper bill to the patient as well. So in many cases, you had a couple of places that bills needed to go, and they liked having another option. Again, mobile turned out to be the benefit there turned out to be that they received a payment in full faster than in any other medium. And so that was success.
Nice. So I want to sort of wrap up with just one last question, and I always like this one. So looking backwards, right, thinking about what happened, you were new to a role. You talked about, being nervous, going out, doing a lot of research. But obviously for other folks, maybe next role you have where you're new, right? And the management team telling you, go build this solution. Like, what would you do differently? How would you approach it knowing what you know now?
I think I would have gotten in the field faster. I was lucky in that I worked with an engineering lead that had been at the company for over 10 years. I had a great UX lead who had been at the company also, I think, for about 2 to 3 years. So as I was moving from my previous role into the new role, I had a chance to lean on them a bit to kind of take lead and set up some of the initial meetings as I was still getting up to speed. Going forward, at companies that I've been at after this role, I've spent more time in the field right away. At one company, within the first week, I was already in the field meeting customers. I didn't have an objective or a need. I just wanted to go out, meet our practitioners, understand their needs, and I didn't have any expectations. So the nice thing was there was no bias going in. I think my initial bias was, okay, I have this mandate. Is this the right mandate? And I have one shot at this. I need to build this correctly. I think, given the timing of the year, that helped us, and I leveraged that to help us. That was kind of a selling point. I think going forward, I might look at the marketplace, what's happening in the marketplace, and I would just get into the field a lot faster. At the moment, as you know, I'm working on founding my own company, and I've done a ton of research over the years. Some of my research is old. I'm going back to it now. And I'm going back into the market, not having the bias and assumption that data that I picked up over the last couple of years is correct or current. I'm going in kind of relearning all over again as the market, needs change. Through the research over the past year, talking to many customers, they were also being affected by other software platforms. Other companies were demoing. One of the most amazing pieces of information we didn't expect to pick up was some of the back office staff were talking about different features. And we thought, well, this is really interesting. Some of these things they didn't talk about in the past. Where is this coming from? Come to learn that a company had been out there demoing their feature, and it was really interesting. And some of the practices did get access to an alpha. Later on, I think about 6 months after that, we had a chance to actually meet the founders of that other company. And I think because they were interested in talking to us, we thought, well, there's something here. They're open to talking to us. We're technically competitors. they must be maybe interested in integrating or getting acquired. About even 6 months, 8 months after I left the company, I learned that Cario actually acquired that company. So it was just kind of interesting. You never know what you're going to learn. You never know what you're going to come across. And I think, being inquisitive, inquiring, asking questions, that is all so valuable, because even that information that you pick up today, you might think it's not important, but you learn, 3-4 months later, there's a need, there's something relevant and it's important, it's useful. So listening, I think, has been one of the biggest aspects I've learned about this, and listening fast, going out in the field and listening quickly, learning quickly. I do it much faster now.
Very interesting. And then later on, looking back and connecting the dots, right? It sounds like, so sometimes you don't know what to do with that insight, and then later on it becomes more apparent, like the acquisition of the target. Interesting. So yeah, great advice for folks, especially folks who are just starting out in product management. Get out there, listen frequently, listen early, listen often. Great message. I do want to see if any folks have questions who are listening live. I know we did get a comment just about a compliment on the skill for leadership, skill for leading the team and doing customer discovery and product development process. So sounds like folks have been challenged with that as well in the past, trying to make sure they can navigate those internal decisions, being, focused on the customer, but having enough pushback on your senior management team saying, okay, we'll go figure out what the customer wants. Yeah, your idea might be good, or maybe not, right? But let's figure out what the customer really wants and needs, and then we'll build from there. I know a lot of product managers struggle with that dynamic. I don't know if there's any other questions.
Great. The great news about the ultimate outcome of those results are we met our goal. So we were given a goal. We met that goal around October. So our financial targets, we met that in around October of that year. And then our senior leadership actually increased our target again. And so by January 3rd, after all the revenue had been consolidated, had come in, and I validated our reporting, we ultimately, met our goals and increased goals. So the customer validation, the data, the launches, the go-to-markets, all of that, I think, was a success to actually being in the field, talking to customers, and just validating for our senior leadership to, letting them know that, the initial idea was the right one, but now being able to collect the additional customer research, which, by the way, very low cost. We used a couple of tools really inexpensively. The time that it took to do the research was incredibly useful, and I think really contributed to us meeting our goals and the increased goals. Leadership increased our goals later in the year to be able to focus on this revenue. We would not have made that unless we had done that customer research.
Wow. Perfect. I think we can probably end on that note. Great message. So fascinating story. I think a great lesson learned for folks who are in product management or new to product management. And so I hope everyone took away at least one new thing from the conversation. I know I did. As I always do say, feel free to continue the discussion. You can enter your comments or questions in the chat. It'll be up on LinkedIn for as long as LinkedIn keeps it there. And of course, stay tuned for our next Product Insiders event right here on LinkedIn. And so if you want to listen to our next story, we'll be here on LinkedIn. And of course, if you need help leveraging customer insights to navigate tough product decisions, you can feel free to message me on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to chat. So until next time, I'm your host, Zach Lyons with Agile Innovation Advisors. So take care, everybody.
Thanks, Zach.
Thank you.